Okay, welcome to the module all about breaking down our big long term dreams into little bite sized next steps. So, in this module, what we're going to be doing is talking a lot about how making tiny little adjustments and changes every day, or a few times a week, or a few times a day, how those tiny little actions can help us achieve amazing things. So often as humans, we've got this sort of funny way about thinking that we can achieve all these amazing things in the long term, but actually we underestimate what we can do every day with the little tiny steps. What's really important with this process is that we create, yes, our big long-term dream goals, but then we break them down and we celebrate the little wins along the way in the journey. So you'll see from the visual here, we have a visual of the ladder. So at the very top of the ladder, that's your dream. That's your big long-term goal, or even your medium goal. So that is something that you want to achieve either for yourself, your family, or your child. So you can pop that up the top there in the visual, and then look at the baseline. So that's the ground level. And that's when you think about, where are we at now? Where is my child at now in relation to achieving that long-term goal? And then you look at the rungs of the ladder. And they're what we call our next steps. So with each rung of the ladder, you want to make sure that you've got a really specific thing that you're achieving so that you know that you're moving closer towards that long-term goal. So it's important that not only is that a really specific goal, but you also acknowledge it and celebrate it. Because what happens is, as you achieve a goal, if you're always just thinking, oh yes, but I want to still get there, and you don't give yourself or your child a pat on the back for achieving it, you don't get that dopamine hit. And we need that dopamine hit because that helps us keep going, right? So make sure that when you achieve that when you get up onto that next rung of the ladder, you take a moment out and you go, hey, that's awesome, go us, or go me. So yeah, make sure you do that. Okay, so let's look here at the next little example that we've got. So at the top of the ladder, what we have is we want, this person wants their child to participate in group activities. So I can imagine my son was definitely like this. He was great one-on-one with me, or a childcare worker, or a therapist. But when it came to group time, sitting in a group, that was really quite tricky for him. And so we actually had this goal as well. So you'll see here the short-term goal, or the next step, the next little rung of the ladder, was for this child to sit next to a child in the circle during music for one song. And maybe that was even with mum or with a childcare worker beside them. So that's your first step. So perhaps the child isn't staying in the circle at all. And so that's the first step. Okay, so once that goal is achieved, you celebrate that little goal achieved, and then you could set the next step. So the next step might be to do the exact same thing, but for 2 songs. So once 2 songs are finished, we celebrate it, and that's achieved. Or you might say, we're going to do 1 song again, but this time mum is going to still be in the room, but maybe sit a little bit further away from the child. So you're just making the goal a little bit trickier, little bit by little bit. And you might decide that you want to repeat a goal for a few times until the child is really happy in that environment. So that's how we go about setting a long-term goal. A long-term goal is we want the child to be able to sit during group time. And the next step is for that child just to sit there for 1 song happily. So when we're thinking about these goals, particularly with short-term goals, it's actually really important that we word it the right way and we think about these goals in the right way, because thinking about and writing these goals in the right way can really help set us up for success. And that's what we want. We want to be able to tick off as many successes as we can, because with every success, we're getting closer and closer to that long-term goal. So some of the things you might want to think about when you're thinking about this short-term goal is, when will it happen? So setting a goal at a time which is, really convenient or really low stress, it is really helpful. So say your goal is around the family coming together for a meal. So Monday morning, when everyone's rushing around trying to get ready, get out the door, is probably not the best time, right? But a good time could be Sunday, because you know that there's no extracurricular activities, everyone's home, everyone should be well rested, shouldn't be too hungry, all of those sorts of things. So think about when this goal might happen. And also with goals for yourself, you might want to think about when you might have an opportunity to have some time to talk with your partner if it's a goal that involves them. So you might want to think about not only your schedule but their schedule, and also maybe when the children are asleep or at daycare or whatever. So you want to think about the optimum time in your diary when this goal can happen, and then write it down, because we know that if we set a really specific time and day, we're actually something like 75% more likely to achieve it than if we just say this week. So make sure you think about when the goal will happen. The second thing to think about is, where will it happen? So again, this is making sure that we can really see in our mind's eye how this goal might plan out, and thinking about the most optimum environment for this to happen. So will this be a goal that happens at home? Will it happen out at the park? Will it happen at school? Think about where you will be, what it will look like when you're achieving this next step. Also, what will you or what will your child be doing? So really try and be specific with what it looks like. The more specific we can be, the more likely we'll know when we've achieved it. So it doesn't mean you can't be flexible. Of course, we can change things as needed. So if your short-term goal was to kick the ball around the park for 5 minutes, with the children, and it's pouring with rain, but you decide instead you're going to get a pair of socks and kick them around the hallway, that's fine. You can be flexible if life happens and things have to change. But when you're setting up the goal, you want to make it specific, because then you're more likely to achieve it. So there's some little things to think about when you're thinking about your short-term goal or your next step goal. I'm going to go through a few examples now so you can get thinking, and then I'll let you guys have your own turn at doing this. So here we've got a couple of family goals that have come through with other families in the past. So we've got this goal here, positive father and son time. And so the goal that the parent has set here is that Dad will take Joey to his favorite park on Sunday morning for 30 minutes. So that's really answering those questions. So we know what it's going to look like. We know when it's going to happen. We know how long it's going to be for. We know who's going to be there and what they're going to be doing. We can see it in our mind's eye. So that's a really good first step. A personal goal example. So this long-term goal is, I'll feel energized, calm, and happy. That sounds lovely. So that's this mum or dad's long-term goal. So we've got two examples here of what different people might put for a short-term goal or a next step goal. So one says, I'll have some time for myself, which sounds awesome, right? The other one is, I'll do an online yoga class at 8 p.m. on Thursday. Now, I don't know if you can imagine it. But so often that's a goal is mum and dad will say, I actually really just want some time out, and I'm going to make sure this week I give myself some time out. And then we come back next week and they normally haven't achieved it. But if they think about it, if they look at their diary, if they treat it with the same weight that you would a doctor's appointment or, a work meeting, if you really think about when you can do it, prioritize it, pop it in the diary, hence the yoga 8 p.m., then you really know when you've achieved it, and you really know, you've really prepped yourself that on Thursday night, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be doing that yoga class. And what it's doing is it's taking into consideration your life at the moment. So it's making you take that extra step to think about when you're going to achieve this goal. So that's a much clearer goal to write than I'll have some time for myself, because believe me, I've spent years telling myself I'm going to give myself some more time and don't achieve it unless I'm really specific. So that's just a little helpful hint for you there. So what we want you to do now is to have a think about any of the goals that you have, whether they're medium goals, long-term goals. Put them on the star template and think about, where you are in relation to that goal right now. So are you, miles away from it, or are you close to it? And if you're close to it, great. You might only have a few rungs to the ladder. But if it's a really long-term goal, that's totally okay too. Where are you now in relation to that long-term goal? And what is your next step? When are you going to do it? What will it look like when you're doing it? How long will you do it for? And make sure you jot that down on your little rectangle, or the little rectangle place there, and pop it beside that first rung in the ladder. And you might want to even go the next step and pop it in your phone, pop it in your calendar, and see if you can do something this week before we meet again. Try and achieve a next step.